Isabel finally here. The hurricane punches ashore, moves inland, turning out the lights, shutting down the government. And it's not over yet. The latest tonight on where this still dangerous storm is headed and what it is doing. Also tonight, the war for Iraq. U.S. troops ambushed again. Several are dead. Is there any break in sight? And how a lot of Americans got burned in a summer without sun and a final shot from a hurricane.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. Hurricane Isabel is punishing the mid-Atlantic coast tonight, moving inland now with high wind, heavy rain, power outages, and the threat of spin-off tornadoes. While the storm's intensity is diminishing, it remains a very large hurricane and could cause serious trouble for millions of people besides those already affected. The center of Isabel came onto the barrier islands of North Carolina about midday, winds gusting over 100 miles an hour. The wind snapped power lines in North Carolina and Virginia and left more than 1 million homes and businesses in those regions without electricity. The federal government in Washington virtually closed down. President Bush left town before the storm hit. Isabel is now moving inland and moving mostly up on the map at a brisk 25 miles an hour. Floods are still likely, but the danger of flooding might be somewhat less because the system is moving so fast. A turn to the north-northwest would take Isabel across eastern Virginia to west Pennsylvania over the next day. CBS News correspondents are deployed tonight all along Isabel's path. We begin with Lee Cowan on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Lee?
It was anger without mercy that greeted the Atlantic coast today. A watery, windswept tirade that put Isabel among Mother Nature's worst.
We don't know what'll happen. With God's help, we'll all get through this.
With unrelenting winds topping 100 miles an hour, Isabel's eye crept ashore just before noon, right where forecasters said she would, the Outer Banks of North Carolina.
Looking pretty bad right now.
By mid-afternoon, the hurricane-force winds were covering a huge area, and that's because at the height of this storm, these hurricane-force winds were covering more than 100 miles, stretching out from the eye itself.
Which meant that for the better part of 10 long hours, the beaches took a battering. Waves crashed over sand dunes and headed for homes and businesses.
This is pretty serious stuff.
Sam Vaughn battled the wind and waves to check on his fishing pier, the livelihood he was too afraid to leave.
Everything I have in the way of retirement investments are down here on the Outer Banks, and so if they're going to go, I want to be here and watch them disappear.
As Isabel marched inland, there was a lot of disappearing. Tonight, 1 million people in North Carolina and Virginia have been robbed of electricity. Flights up and down the East Coast have been canceled or delayed. And for cities still awaiting Isabel's arrival, simple services have gone away too. But there is one bright spot.
Well, I don't think we'll have the massive flooding like we had in Hurricane Florida in 1999.
But that rain is still something important to watch tonight, because even though the trailing edge of Isabel is now starting to leave the coast, it could still drop as much as 10 inches of rain. So even though the winds may be dying down, it certainly doesn't look like Isabel is going to die very quietly. Dan?
Lee Cowan in North Carolina. In Virginia, the hit from Hurricane Isabel went way beyond the shorefront. It could take days to fully assess the damage and restore all the power. Bob Orr has the story there.
In Virginia, Isabel's fury was most visible on the battered shoreline. 20-foot waves driven by 10 hours of relentless winds ate away at miles of recently reclaimed beaches. Horizontal rains made even essential travel difficult. In places, the Atlantic broke across the boardwalk, and police on constant patrols tried to enforce a mandatory evacuation. But the hurricane's real misery is spreading far inland. Streets in cities like Norfolk are flooded. Downed trees and utility lines have knocked out power to more than 1 million people. Jeff McNeil sent his family to higher ground as he rode out the storm alone and powerless.
I've got enough peanut butter to last a few days, so I mean, I don't really, I'm just more worried about my house.
I just take one of these.
Even some evacuees who left threatened homes for the safety of shelters arrived only to find out that the shelters, too, are without electricity.
It's hot in here. We're all so close together. It's just
I'm wanting to go home and go back out, and that's not a safe thing to do. So
now repair crews from as far away as Louisiana and Mississippi are responding to help make repairs. But trucks will remain parked in staging areas like this one near Washington until the danger of Isabel passes. And Isabel is not through yet. Within the past 90 minutes or so, conditions have gotten significantly worse here in Virginia Beach. I have to say, even when the wind stops blowing, getting the power back will be a massive job. It took utility crews 10 days to clean up the problems of Floyd in 1999. And Dan, this time already, this storm Isabel has left twice as many people in the dark. Dan?
Bob Orr in Virginia, thanks. To the north of where Bob is, the nation's capital was in shutdown mode to protect life and also to protect some of the nation's most treasured history. For the scene there, we go to CBS's Cheryl Atkinson. Cheryl?
Hello, Dan. It is stormy here. We're wiping off the camera lens now, but the full wrath of Isabel has yet to be felt in Washington, D.C. That'll happen overnight. We could get up to 6 inches of rain, wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour, maybe a foot of rain to the northwest of here. But well before Isabel's arrival, the city was shut tight.
With the waters of the Potomac River expected to become fierce, the flood walls went up today. The ground is already drenched from a rainy summer, so flooding's a major worry. In low-lying Alexandria, Virginia, they're hoping sandbags will keep flood waters at bay. Federal workers were told to stay home today as the city subways were shut down and mass transit came to a halt.
It is big, it is ugly. Even though it's deteriorated a little bit, it's still a bad storm, and it is heading our way.
Amtrak canceled trains affected by the storm. Washington airports are all but closed, and over 1,000 flights have been stopped. Saving the animals is job one at the National Zoo. Banners came down, protective walls went up, and some of the animals, including the bald eagles, were brought inside. Preserving history is a top priority. Robert E. Lee's mansion at Arlington National Cemetery is boarded up tight for the first time in memory. Across the street from the Washington Monument, workers shored up the World War II memorial under construction. One thing that remains steadfast, the Army Sentinel that keeps a constant 24-hour-a-day vigil at the tomb of the unknown soldier. The guard will be there throughout the storm.
The full force of Isabel will hit here at a time when most people are at home and in bed. Isabel means a 4-day weekend for most of the city's 350,000 federal employees and a lot of other people, but overtime duty for cleanup workers and rescue crews. Dan?
Cheryl Atkinson reporting live from Washington. Thank you. Conditions are starting to improve tonight in areas where Isabel first hit land. Morehead City, North Carolina was right in the eye. CBS's Cynthia Bowers was with the riders of the storm in and around there.
North Carolina born and bred, Marion James rattles off hurricanes the way some people do the names of their kids.
I remember Bertha, Fran, Floyd, Isidore.
It was Floyd 4 years ago that left her powerless.
We were the first to lose power and the last to get it back.
This time, she didn't take any chances. She bought a generator to see her and the grandchildren through the fury of the storm.
Yeah, just make a U-turn right here.
Thousands of tourists were driven away from the Barrier Island community of Atlantic Beach as Isabel roared ashore. The last summer weekend for local businesses was a washout.
I don't like it, don't want it, but we can't do anything about it. So.
Nonetheless, Harry and Pat Rippey stuck it out with a few hardy souls.
Nobody had any food. They were all eating potato chips.
A few miles down the shore, 81-year-old Bill Von Thaden and his wife Ellen were hunkered down.
Some people think we're a little bit nuts staying. We just tell them that we've done it, over 20 years very often, and we think it's worth staying.
Don Bowman thought so too. He acknowledged every paradise has a drawback.
It's like the mountains. You're going to have snowstorms, ice storms, lose power, lose your water. Same thing on the coast, any resort area like that. So you just take the good with the bad, or the bad with the good.
As bad as things look here right now, this is far from the worst of it. We are getting reports now that further inland, hundreds of homes have been damaged or destroyed by high winds and high water. Dan?
Cynthia Bowers reporting live from Morehead City, North Carolina. Important as the hurricane is, lest we forget, so of importance is Iraq, where tonight American forces were ambushed again. this time near Saddam Hussein's hometown of Tikrit. The U.S. military says 3 4th Infantry Division soldiers were killed and at least 2 more were wounded. Earlier, as CBS's Kimberly Dozier reports, 2 more Americans were wounded near the town of Qadilya.
Iraqi guerrillas hit U.S. troops on every front today. West of Baghdad, they ambushed an American convoy in a carefully timed and executed attack. They exploded a remote-controlled roadside bomb to stop the convoy. Then they opened fire. Iraqi fighters to the north were blamed for another attack. A crucial oil pipeline caught fire and burned for hours. It added to a growing sense of frustration among top brass here that no measure is enough to protect their soldiers or Iraq's resources. U.S. troops travel everywhere heavily armed and on their guard.
We just pulled out here yesterday just to come out and help protect the oil line.
In a tank?
In a tank.
But the conflict keeps costing American lives and billions of U.S. tax dollars, including millions of dollars spent on fuel imports to make up for the revenue lost when oil goes offline. Iraqis expected by now that they'd be enjoying their country's oil wealth, not standing in line waiting for fuel. Many Americans, too, thought they might enjoy the benefits of cheap Iraqi crude instead of being stuck with a steep repair bill.
We Americans are spending $3 to $5 million a day to bring oil here. Why?
The Iraqi people keep sabotaging, keep looting, keep damaging the infrastructure.
Ordinary Iraqis blame Americans for not fixing the damage fast enough, even as the soldiers are risking their lives to do it.
It's very, very frustrating.
And it's far from over. On the road where U.S. troops were attacked today, America has made new enemies. They're chanting the name of that old foe, Saddam Hussein, and vowing to attack Americans everywhere. Kimberly Dozier, CBS News, Mosul, Iraq.
Still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News. Where did so many Americans get the idea Saddam was involved in 9/11? Was it or was it not from President Bush and his administration? We'll check the record next. Iraq has been freed from Saddam Hussein, and there are some good things happening in the country. But with U.S. casualties mounting in Iraq, President Bush's critics are coming back to the case he made for going to war. Today, Massachusetts Senator Edward Kennedy said there had been, quote, no imminent threat from Iraq, calling that suggestion, again, quote, a fraud, quote, made up in Texas to boost Republicans. CBS News Chief White House correspondent John Roberts has been checking the record about what the president, the vice president, and their administration have said about Iraq, Saddam, and the terror connection.
Under fire from critics who charge he's been blurring the lines between Iraq and 9/11, President Bush was forced to clarify yesterday that no connections exist.
We've had no evidence that Saddam Hussein was involved with the September the 11th.
But if 7 out of 10 Americans believe Saddam was probably behind 9/11, as a recent poll showed, President Bush may have only himself to blame.
Before September the 11th, many in the world believed that Saddam Hussein could be contained.
In speech after speech, the president has thrown Saddam, 9/11, and al-Qaeda all in the same basket.
The Battle of Iraq is one victory in a war on terror that began on September the 11th, 2001.
Why, just this past weekend, his vice president described Iraq this way.
The geographic base of the terrorists who've had us under assault now for many years, but most especially on 9/11.
And all the way back to the morning of September 11th, according to notes taken by an aide, Defense Secretary Rumsfeld was wondering if the intelligence was good enough to hit SH, Saddam Hussein. Critics say the White House wanted Americans to believe that Saddam and 9/11 may have been linked, that it provided a tremendous rallying point to sell a war and a costly occupation. Last February, justifying a war in Iraq on the basis it could prevent another 9/11, Rumsfeld said war would cost a heck of a lot less than 9/11 cost.
The administration has not really sought to clarify matters, and it seems to have benefited in terms of its own policy towards Iraq from this ambiguity.
The White House insists it never meant to link Saddam Hussein with 9/11, only to illuminate his ties to al-Qaeda, ties intelligence and terrorism experts say are still thin at best. Dan?
John Roberts reporting live from the White House. The Department of Homeland Security said today it will spend $100 million to develop a system for defending commercial jets from terrorist missile attacks. The department is seeking proposals from defense contractors for ways to counter shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, Wall Street, after the latest exposure of secrecy, manipulation, and greed. Better ethics and more integrity ahead, or just more of the same? On the CBS Market Watch, the index designed to predict where the U.S. economy may be headed is pointing up, at least some, for the fourth straight month. But a major problem remains: the economy is still not creating enough jobs to meet demand and lower the unemployment figure. Stock prices rallied today. The Dow and the Nasdaq closed at their highest levels in over a year. Wall Street is waiting now to see who will succeed Dick Grasso, forced out as chairman of the New York Stock Exchange after word got out about a secret, just how much he was being paid. CBS's Anthony Mason reports tonight on the impact of the Grasso fiasco.
After 8 years as chairman of the New York Stock Exchange, Dick Grasso did not ring the closing bell today. The bell had tolled for him.
From today on, the New York Stock Exchange will operate differently.
Board member Carl McCall promised reform at this icon of American capitalism, where Grasso had been rewarded with a pay package totaling nearly $200 million.
Wall Street is deeply embarrassed.
And veteran Wall Street observer Jim Grant says Grasso, who made $30 million in 2001 alone, should have been embarrassed too.
Grasso should have seen how grotesque this number was. He should have had the judgment to anticipate the world's reaction to it.
The public reaction was outrage.
Incidences like this definitely do erode the confidence, I think, in investments.
I just can't believe all of this money just gets thrown in certain people's hands, and then the rest of us have to hope for college grants. I mean, it's ridiculous.
But the hurricane of protest that brought down Grasso may signal that winds of change are blowing on Wall Street.
I think that what is vanishing is the ability of CEOs to get away with it. I think increasingly shareholders are screaming about it.
This gentleman buys it. The ultimate indignity for Grasso: the stock market rallied more than 100 points on the day after his departure. But Jim Grant says no one should shed a tear for the ousted chairman.
Dick Grasso has traded his job for $140 million, and most Americans would probably call that a pretty fair trade.
The board of the stock exchange is now looking for a new leader. One thing is certain: the chairman's job will be taking a pay cut. Anthony Mason, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Next on CBS, Hurricane Isabel batters beach towns already sunk in the funk of a lost summer. An update now on Hurricane Isabel. It is not one of the great, terrible hurricanes of history, as forecasters once warned it could become, but it's fairly bad. In the next 24 hours, the forecast says what's left of this storm will track across eastern Virginia and into Pennsylvania. Strong winds, heavy rain, flooding, power outages, and tornadoes are still possible. After blowing ashore over North Carolina at midday, the hurricane snapped power lines there and up the coast in Virginia. It could take days to restore power to more than 1 million customers. It will also take a while to total up the damage caused by Hurricane Isabel, including damage to the national economy. But as Byron Pitts reports, for many coastal towns, Isabel was only the final blow in the last week of a summer gone sour.
In rain-soaked, wind-whipped Ocean City, Maryland, the beginning of Hurricane Isabel spelled the end to what was already a lost summer. This is a beach town that makes its living on tourist traffic. And this wet and cool summer, the living's been lousy.
We should right now be about 40 miles offshore trying to catch tuna, but there we are.
Charter boat captain Mark Sampson lost $1,000 today. He'll lose $1,000 more tomorrow.
According to the mayor, Ocean City will lose $1.5 million this weekend alone. That's on top of the $10 million they've already lost.
It's a similar story in every coastal community along the eastern seaboard. Bad weather is bad for business.
It's already been a really bad year for us with the rain and the power outages and stuff like that, so it's kind of just adding insult to injury at this point for us.
All along the eastern U.S., it's been a summer of record rainfall. In New York, 10 inches in June. In Pittsburgh, 6 inches in May. This summer in Atlanta, 24.9 inches of rainfall. That's the third most in that city since 1878.
Marching. Do your marching band.
With no place safe to swim in or around their hotel, the Sims family's vacation was cut short.
So the moral of the story for the Sims family?
Plan your vacation outside of hurricane season.
Rain or shine, we have a good time in Ocean City, right?
As for Ocean City's mayor, Jim Mathias, he spent this day encouraging tourists to try again next summer.
How do you put an optimistic spin on all this, Mayor?
Well, you know, you have to look at the sun coming out tomorrow.
Actually, most places on the East Coast won't see sunshine till Saturday. Byron Pitts, CBS News, Ocean City, Maryland.
And that's part of our world tonight. Stay with CBS News and this CBS station for the latest on Isabel. Don't forget the CBS website for information also on the storm. For now, Dan Rather reporting for the CBS Evening News. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, log on to cbsnews.com. This is CBS.